This is day 497, the Aruch Shulchan Yomi. If you would like to sponsor upcoming Shia more of the Aruch Shulchan Yomi, please contact me directly. Very greatly appreciated. If you're doing Siman Shin, you Gimel still, you Dalet till Chav Aleph. So the question that which we're dealing with is, what is Makabah Patish besides hitting a hammer on an anvil? It says Yudav. Okay, if that's my move of my Shomer Gemara, Rabbi said that Tarval Komi Disbei Gemara Malacha Chai Mishum Makabah Patish. Anything which has a Gemara Malacha is Chai Mishum Makabah Patish. Anything the Isbei which has within it Gemara Malacha, the Kashlah B'Chum Malacha is Gemara Malacha. What do you mean the Isbei? It sounds like there's some malachas which are no Gemara Malacha. What are you talking about? Every malacha has a Gemara Malacha. Ma'azeh kol midei ma'ashesh malacha she'en Gemara Malacha. It sounds like there's so much there's no Gemara Malacha. It doesn't make sense. You know that Gemara Avkav name is a malacha. Maybe we'll say anytime you complete a process, even if it's not a process which falls under any of the categories 39 malachas, then nevertheless MSYH makabah patish b'chol malachos. But any work has a makabah, has a completion. Kain, love and memar b'zeh loshen. You shouldn't say kol malacha the isbei gemara malacha, but you should say havli and memar. This is what you should say instead. Kol gemara malacha. Chaim shim makabah. Not any malacha that has gemara malacha, but any gemara malacha, right? Even something where it doesn't fit into one of the categories of 39 malachos of the Torah. So it sounds clear that there are some malachos where there is Gemara Malacha and some which there is no Gemara Malacha. This is it. This is the pshat. Vachi Birusha. Any malacha which doesn't have at its end a separate activity distinct from the ones which came previously. Lo shav said Gemara Malacha. You can't call Gemara Malacha. The Chol Malacha Achasi. It's all one continuous malacha, one cheftza of a malacha. It's not really a cheftza thing, but it's fun to say that. The end is not distinct from what came previously. But in malachas where the completion is after you finish the main body of the work, it's a finishing touch. Such as the tailor, removes the wooden, wooden or stays from the garment, or somebody who's quarrying a stone from the mountain. After he finishes the malacha, he hits it very, very strenuously. I guess it's the last blow, right? Is a separate blow from the previous ones. I'm not sure what he means that, but I don't see exactly how that works. It could be that because till it's severed from the mountain, it's not severed from the mountain. Once the last blow is what does the severing from the mountain. But I have to say that each and every blow severs it a little bit, and last one is one which completes the process until I was chayiv on whatever chayiv. Actually, I'm not sure. Maybe okay, it's a good question. What be chayiv on, if anything? So, but now in last blow, it's chayiv makabah patish. Or makabah kunus ala sadan, or if you hit with the hammer on the anvil, lachliko, to smooth it, or loki yabel shal b'gadi v'acharigo, somebody moves a bubble from a garment after it's woven, or she might say it's 7 love and they move white wool, so in order to beautify it. Zel makabah patish. That's makabah patish, right? So even though there's a malacha which precedes it, and you're over malacha A, but malacha you're also over malacha B, which is makabah patish, the last step in the process. Right? Yeshli bezeh v'peirush ha'mishnayis l'Rambam. Zel shayna. There's explicit right peirush ha'mishnayis. Makabah patish. L'fila kol tikkun malacha v'ashlamasa. Therefore, any fixing a malacha and its completion, Gemara michut, such as removing the wings, not the wings, the feathers from a bird, or scraping something, and the types of adornment. Kulam tlodas makabah patish, all derivatives makabah patish. V'omram kamid this makabah malacha chai mishum makabah patish. That's what they mean. Any malacha that has a gemara malacha, it's chai mishum makabah patish. Ad kan l'shono, and quote from the Rambam. Zeu kif v'reinu. That's like we said. The bracket he says, "Ikar Makam Patish Kasav Zel Shoyne." Rambam writes on the core, not the Tolada, the of Makam Patish as follows: Makam Patish Shvil B'Shas Kamar Malacha. Makam Patish says even at the time you complete the process, Kasher Oisem Makam Patish, like those who do when they hit something with a hammer. Because the minute is to hit on the directly on the anvil as opposed to on the thing that they're shaping, which is the prior steps. We're talking lashon afilu. So, but the language of afilu, which is saying makbash afilu b'shas kamar malacha. What do you mean by that? It's only Gemar Malacha going to be Chai Mishum Makah B'Patish. B'yesh Li'asher B'duk. So Rosh Hashanah says there's a way to resolve the language of the Rambam. But we know nowadays that maybe we should, in order to resolve this, we would look first in the Kapach Rambam and see if there's a different way of understanding, which in his translation from the original translation. But we're not going to do that. Test 9. Hosa Ol Kavua. So, well, you know what? Let's do it. Okay, so Kapach Perish Mishnah does have afilu, but he adds something important which can resolve the question. It says the Makah B'Patish afilu Gemar Malacha there shall seem hamarakim, but the people who the smiths, but Patishim shemakim hakos Carlos meod. That's not in the original, not in our translation. It's very light blows. The yasher pnei keli, in order to smooth out the keli. Ulachliko b'kohen pulazu al tatrik. So it's totally different what we have here, because as he points out in the footnote, the girsa which we have that is not at all. But we have, he says maybe it's the Girsa Maladura Kama. But this is not what the Rambam's saying. Rambam's saying that somebody who, someone who's Makpatish, even at the end of Malacha, in other words, the Kli is made done. But it's a finishing touch. So even though he's still hitting it, but he's hitting it lightly, a different way, which is not essentially the Keli, but to smooth it out, that's Makah Patish. According to this, it says, Kol tika malacha ugmara. Then he fixing a fine, deep fixing of the work. Gonna shifa batzich such as smoothing and polishing. Chomina yipi kulin close Makah Patish. And all sorts of adornment. That's Makah Patish. Vuamam komidid ismar gemar malacha chayim mishum Makah Patish. That's what it means. Anything which has gemar malacha means has a finishing touch. And he doesn't have this hammer on the anvil, which we have for Enway, which is in Rashi. He has the finishing touch of the fine work at the very end of the process, right? And even though it's done still with a hammer, so it doesn't seem different than what you did previously. No, it's different because it's hakos kalos. It's a different process. So even if you're doing makabah, but doing the same you did before, but for a different purpose and in a finer way in order to finish it up, that's makpash according to the Rambam. Okay, test sign. Also, oil kavua, somebody who makes a permanent tent. Chai mishum boina. Because boina enosim oil aray l'chatchila. That's why you don't even make a temporary tent. If you can l'chatchila, preferentially. L'osasin oil aray, and you don't knock down a temporary tent. The zera shema yaseh, you start oil kavua unless you come to make or to destroy a permanent tent. If you didn't create or destroy a temporary tent, potter you're exempt. Shabbos you're also allowed to add to an Olarai on Shabbos, which has major ramifications, like for strollers, right? Everybody says if you leave a stroller a little bit, the awning of the stroller a little bit closed, then you can close it completely. If there is no awning on a stroller, you can't make put an awning, a covering, a plastic covering, whatever it is on the stroller on Shabbos because of alright. Therefore, literally the stopper of the window. Then luach, such as it's a board or shayl kodov or something else, which used in order to stop up a window. You can't do it. I feel him in a kosher b'chaloin. even if it's not tied onto the window, like certain other things like bolts to close the door have to be, the michse kedavar bifnei ma'atzmo, even though it looks like it's something separate, ain't all right. That's l'chatchila. No, this is not an all right in and of itself. Zemikre tosefes al all arai v'shari. It's called an addition to an all arai, and therefore it's okay. So it's not clear why it should be considered tosefes all arai. Afterwards, after all, the window is part of the the wall, which is an all kavua. But evidently, adding all arai onto an all kavua also, it's like avchomer shmigutz. If you can add an all arai onto an all arai, you certainly can all arai onto an all kavua. Unless it's taka arai. Yeah, and that's basically what the Aruch is going to say a little bit later on in the Sif. Even on a skylight, that's mirrored for this reason. And now he explains it. Right? We don't say this is that this is like adding onto a building. And the low garment Orion should be no worse than making it from initially, right? They ain't okay, it's not. They ain't so suffer. It's not adding on to the building. Therefore, it's like adding on to all right. It's like I said before, it seems like chomer or mutar, and it's permissible. The mutar. And kfar sas mubo and rabusa said. Now, if they used it already beforehand at least once, there's no chiddush here. It's made for this purpose, in and out. I feel a dime was sas mubo, even if they haven't used it to close it. Chonly stumbo, they can use it to close. In chashua me'erev Shabbos sasmo, if you thought to use it Erev Shabbos for that purpose. Like anything else where thought is affecting with some Shimon Shin Ches Seif Mem. The truth is that you need this heter even to unfold a folding table on Shabbos, right? That it's made to be folded and unfolded. Otherwise, that'd be considered all alright. It's high enough. A lot of Mishnah Berurah here. Mishnah Berurah says something where if the derech is not to leave it there forever, just temporarily. Such as let's say you want to stop up a window with a article of clothing, right? A board you might leave there permanently. With an article of clothing, such like, you can use that even if you didn't have das to use it from before Shabbos. But on the other hand, the Biur Halacha does say that if it was tied on, he said, Aruch Hashanah says, let's not be tied on. Biur Halacha agrees doesn't need time, but if it was tied on, they don't even need machshava. Mishnah Berurah says that the reason why this halacha applies altogether is because since it's something which is the derech is to open and close, that's why it's permissible. Said, and Biur Halacha says if it's only open at infrequent intervals, then he says it's also because like adding on to all kavua, which Aruch Hashanah does not make such a distinction. And in such a case, he says it has to be that the board is actually hanging and not lying on the floor. It's hanging on a rope or dangling off the floor in order to from before Shabbos in order to be able to use it on Shabbos, which is a major chumrah which the Aruch Hashanah clearly does not hold of here. The Biur Halacha also writes that that which you have to, when you do have to have machshava on Erev Shabbos, it's not specifically machshava to close the window with this board, but if you if you prepare for any purpose, then you can use it, because the real issue here is the issue of a moving muktzeh, and once you designate for any purpose, you can move it. Some people say no, specifically he brings down here, but some people said, and kind of like undermines that statement, he says some people say no, it specifically has to be have in mind for the purpose of closing the window, because otherwise it's considered mosif al habinyan b'Shabbos. Yutzayim v'yeshish machshava levad eino moil. Sometimes where the mental designation is not sufficient. Even though for preparation for muktzah of machshava is effective, nevertheless, because he is with the signature where the isser binyan involved, which is potential d'oraisa. Lo to a machshava, the thought doesn't work, and we can't also a maisa unless you did a maisa kigon, and this is what I mentioned in past before. in the passing. The bolt to close door could go kone sheitkin lios nabal. The way they used to lock doors is putting a bolt across the back of the door from bracket to bracket. So actually no, not from brackets. That probably would not be a problem because he says they're going kone sheitkin lios nabal the hainish tofo etzadelos bekoisel. You plug it into the wall. That's what makes it look like a binyan. This is looks more like building because than the window stopper, because window stopper is not near the ground. But evidently this beam, which is used to close the door, goes, or this stick, but a rod is the best term. The rod goes near the ground. Also, I guess, to shove it into the wall, maybe that's part of it as well. Never you need a meiser from before Shabbos begins. Enough to think about from yesterday. So it's got to prepare for this purpose. There's also machlokas in this. The Rashi ain't no died b'masha tikno taknel tash b'sen ilas habayis. It's not enough that you can use it for locking the door. Ella Yehei Sheiroi Gam Tashbach. It's got to be suitable for some additional purpose. Does Yishel of Torah's Keli? Then it has a Torah's Keli because they have additional purpose. It's not like adding on to the structure. Such as a rod which is suitable to turn over olives in the press. Beinu Tam is Mekel actually here, which is kind of rare relative to Rashi. It's enough to designated for this purpose of locking the house. It's not clear the Rambam holds. He says it has to have the status of a vessel. Gemara doesn't say what kind vessel for this or vessel for something else. But regardless, that's only if you're designating something new. But if you already used it to lock the house right before Shabbos, that's sufficient. Anytime you use the ray, that is has a Teiras Keli. We times say Yesh Mishom. According to there is someone who says, seems to be the Ran, the Gam Kakachlon ain't that machshava, that even a window stopper is not enough to have machshava. It's article Maisa, and you have to do something in order to add the Maisa in order to make it suitable to put in the window on Shabbos. They don't mention this tonight, according to this opinion, by Pekak, because Mistama, the Pekak was used from before Shabbos. The board was used before Shabbos, goes out the window. And we're talking about, on the other hand, a rod, which is not used from before Shabbos. I guess normally the rods changed over time, and and might even use the different rods, whatever is available. And whereas the window stopper probably was one specific one, which is used over time. So stama, a rod can be new that Shabbos. Stama, a window stopper is not. They don't mention this opinion at all. That you have to have actually do a maiseh by Pekaka Chaloin, and the Shabur also says that Shas Tzor can be made like Rabbeinu Tam. And Uplukta the again, I should have read the or from the Aruch before I told you that. But the Aruch goes on and says Uplukta Rashi Rabbeinu Tam. They don't bring it down near the kingdom of the Rabbanon. Since it's the Rabbanon, one can you remind Rabbeinu Tam was making and says that. You don't need to have a designation with Maisa. Machshava is enough. So the Mishnah Berurah, again, as I said, he says Shas Tzor can make a time, but he says it begrudgingly, because he says he found several shitas which hold that it's if he didn't designate it, it's still not even called Klishim Lachtu Le'Isser. Because it was only by because it just says Mana Ba'alma, but again he says B'Shas Atchak you can't rely on Rabbeinu Tam. The Aruch Shulchan just says you can rely on Rabbeinu Tam outright, and that's what which is oh wait, I'm sorry, that's not the Shittas Rabbeinu Tam. Not that you don't need to have Machshava. Sorry, That's by pkaka chaloin. You don't need machshava, but you only need machshava. But by the rod for the door, the Machlokes Rashi Be'otam is whether you need to have it designated for another malacha or not. Is sufficient that it's designated for this malacha. So this he says, and that's Mishnah Berurah is saying that he found many people like Rashi has to be designated for another malacha. But in the final analysis, he says at least b'shas adchak Aglai Rabbeinu Tam, that designated for the malacha of locking the door in and of itself is sufficient. And Aruch HaShulchan doesn't say anything about Shas HaTzorech, he just says, it's the Rabbanim with Aglai Rabbeinu Tam to be mekel. My chain says She'aroi Davar means it doesn't have to be suitable for anything else, anything else, which is tikno. But since you fixed it, and you did a maisa and you prepared it, again, we're talking about the rod. The rod we have to do a maisa to prepare it for the purpose of using to lock the door. B'sagi, that's enough. Now, according to this, it's called Klisha Machdol Heter. In the case of Rashi's case, where you had it designated for the purpose of using to turn over olives, that's a Klisha Machdol Isser, because that you're not allowed to turn over olives in the press on Shabbos. So therefore, in essence, it comes out a fascinating thing. According to Rashi, because you're miyachid it to another purpose, it can end up being Klisha Machdol Isser. According to Rabbeinu Tam, because you're miyachid specifically the purpose of locking, unlocking, it's a Klisha Machdol Heter. Big nafkamina, right? That's what he's talking about here. Dolino deles b'utum b'Shabbos, right? V'shitas Rabbeinu Rashi being she'roi davar acher. According to Rashi, it says it has to be suitable something else. He must have davar have a davar also b'Shabbos. If that thing is something which is also in Shabbos, can call limbs of bo such as turning a stick to turn over olives in the press, making malachto shel iser. It's called klisha malachto iser. Ela shemutar inobo, but you're allowed to use it to lock the door in klisha malachto iser, because that's lo klisha malachto iser. The mutar tzarich gufon kama k'mosh kosab l'b'siman shimches. Okay, that's fascinating. Pierre Lochel writes that if you only miyachid it, that's interesting. As the Chiddush, Pierre Lochel said if you only miyachid it to be used for your olives, it's not called Klisha Machdol Iser because you only miyachid it. It only has money. It only becomes Klisha Machdol Iser if you actually use it for your olives. Okay, I'm not sure. It's interesting. I'm not sure that chiluk. Not sure I fully understand chiluk, but okay. Yurches. Even though we are machmir with this rod, and that's in other words, it has to be you have to do a maisa to make it suitable to be used on Shabbos. We're only machmir to have the status of a keli. But we don't require, like some of the opinions in the Gemara, that it has to be tied on to the door. There is something where we do require that it is it should be tied on the door from before Shabbos. And if it's not tied on the door, even you designate it, we did a meisim before Shabbos, designated for this purpose, or even additionally for another purpose, ain't a moil. Doesn't work. What is this case? Just building up the suspense here. Where this rod goes down into the threshold, not sideways into the wall, but down into the threshold. Near Yosa Kavinian, that looks much more like a Bainer. Therefore, this rod, which is like a peg that you a stake that you use with which you lock by pushing into the threshold. It's very much like building. It's not good enough to designate or even designate mentally or even do a maisa, but ain't only ball can you have kosher but the has to be tied there from before Shabbos. Well, how do you tie it? You test. The case of the Yakshira. In Yesh Brosha Glustera, it has a thickness at the end. The Haino Shuav Be'echad Meharashim. It's thick on one of the sides. V'roy Lichtoshbo. And it's there's a fancy English word for that. I think it's a knob carry, because it has a knob at the end. Okay, so it's suitable to crush things with. Shem keli, where it looks like a keli. A kanleba of shafilim will kosher b'kevel dak. Then it's lean, even if it's tied on with a thin string. Shane Leos Nitabo, and you couldn't hold it up by that string. If you try to hold by the string would snap. Followed by Shino snap, Mikom Hecker, nevertheless it's a hecker, it's enough. Even if it's not tying the door itself, but onto the bolt of the door, which is on the door, not the door itself. Even it's a long string and it's not hanging in the air at all, it's not suspended at all. The heavy mechs should clear shaykhlin sadelis. In which case, looks much more like it's a vessel which is designated for locking the door. Elonigar bards, but even it's dragging the ground. But I feel kulo munach ba'aretz, and even if it's all lying on the ground, flush on the ground, look sheer cloud, and I'm sorry, mufil kulo munach ba'aretz. Period. There's no period here, but should be a period. Even it's ubelok sheer cloud, but if you don't tie it all, lo mahani glustera, even this knob carry. You can't. It doesn't work. It won't work. After the even though it's like a keli, never since it's pushed into the ground. It's like building, and it's not enough. You need to have that string. It's essential. The Mishnah Bura and the Eliyarab write in Shas Tzor you can rely on using that knob carry. I don't know if it's actually a word, but I enjoy using it. Since it's a keli, even without tying it all. Rare kula Mishnah Bura over the Aruch Shulchan. But the Bir Gra sounds like he says the din like the Taz that you need the string no matter what. And the Bir Alecha writes that all this is all talking about where the knob was there already, and you didn't make the knob now for this purpose. But if you made the knob right now for this purpose in order to make it special for using to lock the door, then it's mutter even without tying it all. But some people say you can't be mechalik, or it's no, you don't need tying no matter what. Okay, if it doesn't have this knob at the end, even it's tied to the door itself, you can even use a thin string, from which you can't carry, even it's all lying on the ground. But if it's not tied onto the door, but rather to the bolt of the door, so she has kesher amitz. It has to be a strong knot. She has running out the bolt, which can actually serve to hold the stick by it, the rod by it. The answer she had totally, nevertheless, it still doesn't have to be dangling off the ground. If it's completely lying ground, the isser is only when you can take the rod and move it all together into a corner. And Aruch Shulchan says that if it's dangling, then you can even use a thin string. Because it's a more of hecker if it's dangling by a narrow string than if it's on the ground with a thick rope. The Shur disagrees. He says chevel dak is not appropriate no matter what for this thing which has no gustera. Chafal, because of Turva Shulchan Aruch, see base, the kol nagar shamarnu, any of these rods we're talking about, which goes into the ground, shaskoipa gevoha, so about where threshold is raised. And when you plug it into the threshold, it doesn't pierce into the ground. And if the scope of a threshold is worn down, when you put the nagar in, you're piercing the ground. Havi binyan, that's building. Bialach says mesek by now. I assume that's Aruch Shulchan also means mesek by now. Vasilin obo akam. You can't use it to lock your door. Masabo beis yad v'doime l'makeves. If you made a handle for it and it looks then like a kind of a hammer, muchat tekeli hu b'shari. It's clear that it's a keli and it's permissible. I guess it even goes into the ground. Okay? The Beis Yosef writes, the Mishnah says, Yosef writes away, the Gra writes, according to Rashi and Tur, there is no heter even by making a handle. Which, I'm not sure the handle works. Anyway, says Aruch Shulchan, V'da, you should know, they didn't come on Shanasa Mitchil Nake Baritz. Okay, it doesn't mean, but you made it deliberately to pierce in the ground. The body Mitchil Asuken, well, you know what? not piercing into the ground. I didn't read that right. Sorry. When it's made, what it means to say it's not a problem where there was already a hole in the ground. Where there's already a hole in the ground and it's indentation, and there's going to indentation, that's not a problem. Also chalal bakarka, where they made a cavity in the ground with size to contain the rod. As evidently the case in time of showing small houses, vate mutter is certainly permissible. Mishabura is not sure about it, but anyway, Shon says it's something mutter. It's just like the one which goes into the threshold. There's no difference between in the threshold, which is mechuber karka, it's kind of the ground, and in the ground as long as it's a pre-existing hole. The prohibition we're talking about is only when initially it was made to be plugged into the threshold. And they had no hole in the ground at all. Now the threshold got ruined, and we made and now it goes around the taka piercing the ground. It's definitely like boin in this case. Like the Gra said, that also even he made a handle. By us, and this, you see this with French doors, where it has it slides up and down, and it goes down into a hole in the ground, and they are part of the door. They're not separate in the door. Okay? He says they're connected like with nails, but by us it's actually part of the door. In those for double doors, and you put it in. It goes up and down by like a latch, right? The I think it's like a piston action, we were called. Goes the same place on Shabbos. It goes to weekday. Shabbos is allowed to raise and lower on Shabbos. That is a widespread custom. It's certainly true about these pegs if they are in the windows. Like you have a sliding peg on the window to peg it into the wall. There's no question about this whatsoever.